Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today for Monday, May 12th. And today was a notable day for the major indexes, not just because of the strong price gains, but notable levels for the bulls. So we will take it and more to discuss with my colleague, Justin Nielsen, who joins me now.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. It was certainly a kind of the day that we were looking for, right? To unequivocally say that this market is coming right back. And we'll talk about some stocks that were also looking pretty good today, including American sports, also GE Vernova back on our watch lists, and Uber, which I do have a position in Uber.
As do I. All right. Well, we'll take a look at those stocks. But first, let's take a closer look at the major indexes and really walk through the kind of power that we saw and the levels that we are now above. The Nasdaq up 4.4% on the day. The S&P 500 up 3.3% on the day. The Dow up 2.8%, and the Russell 2000 on pace for a gain of about 3.4% headed into the final stretch. So the NASDAQ taking the lead here. We've been talking for months now at this point, Justin, at length about how important the 200-day line is for your long-term trend. That's the black line on the chart here, equivalent to the 40-week on the weekly chart. And we got above that level in a big way today.
Yeah, and you know what? If you just go back to the weekly chart on the Nasdaq, it's a nice reminder that back in 2022 we had a lot of time beneath that 40-week moving average line, and it was really rough. You had these rallies, but they would roll over. So the fact that we got through that line in not just like a, a
We didn't creep
tentative
above it.
way,
We
yeah,
punched above
yeah,
it.
yeah, I mean, kind of like what we saw with 18,000, right? We would sneak above it, then we'd come back. We'd sneak above it, we'd come back. This was like, okay, I'm above it, and you kind of get the feeling like it's there to stay. Now, that doesn't mean that news can, turn this around and we see a fill in of the gap. That's all possible, but the way that it looks right now, that's what we're going off of. There's all sorts of things you can do in terms of projections and thinking about where the market might be, but at the end of the day, we're kind of trying to trade in the here and now. And right now, this was a clear sign of power. We got above that March 25th high that we were looking at. So for the NASDAQ, that's 18,281. We got above the 18,000 level. We've been above the 21-day moving average line for a while now. In fact, Wednesday will be 10 straight days with the low above the 21-day moving average line. That's one of the things that we look for a power trend.
Mhm.
Speaking of power trends, another thing we look for is that 21-day above the 50-day moving average line. We got
Mhm.
that on Friday, so we want to see that kind of continue. And one of the final things that I've been saying, hey, it might take a while, was that 50-day moving average line turning back into an uptrend. Well, that might come sooner than we thought, because
Of
if
the
you go
power.
50
Yeah.
days back now, we're at March 1st or roughly there. And so we're right at a level where those are going to be dropping off. Those higher price closes are going to be dropping off. And if they can be replaced by prices with the index at around 18,700, 18,800, well, guess what? That's going to turn that 50-day moving average line back into an uptrend. So we've got elements of the power trend kind of coming back into place. And remember, this all started with our follow through day back
Yes.
on April 22nd. And so it's not that we were saying, hey, this is definitely going to work, but that whole idea of doing something and then incrementally adding as the market gives you feedback and tells you you're on the right track is the way that we build up our exposure. And today was a clear sign that that was a good call to do, and that exposure can continue to be increased.
Absolutely. And there was an intraday test right at the beginning of the day, right? Some profit takers into this strength. And what we did see, Justin, was by the close, a finish at essentially day highs here. So that has to also be encouraging for the bulls. Now, what we want to see from here, once you take out a level, get back above it, then you just like all of those other milestones that you mentioned, the follow through day. All right, let's hold above the follow through day low. Let's
Mhm.
hold above the 21 day. Let's hold above the 50 day. And now we want to stay above this 200-day moving average.
Yeah, the fact that we closed high in the range, certainly, the first, 5-minute bar, we were talking about this on IBD Live this morning. There was a little bit of a fade there coming in, but you saw the market really kind of shift gears, go back on the offensive, and these indexes closed near their highs for the day. And that's exactly what you want to see on a day of power. Look, you can be a little bit more forgiving when you gap up that much. If you still, even a 3% close higher is something that you don't sneeze at, for the NASDAQ. But the fact that we did finish so strong is just
Mhm.
one extra element of strength that you just like to see.
Exactly. Okay, lots of good progress there. The S&P 500, similar action in that it got above its 200-day line and that marked high from late March as well. So continued progress here for the S&P.
Yeah, and again, in a very similar way as the Nasdaq Composite, you did clear that March 25th high. You cleared, a level of, the 200-day moving average line. The 5,500 level was kind of our first level that we were looking at. 5,800 was kind of the next level that we were looking at, or 5,700 probably. But we cleared that with gusto, and again, strong close there. And look, it wasn't just your FANG stocks that were participating today.
Right.
You look at FNGS, and certainly that had a lot to do with it. And I do have a position in FNGS. So a lot of outperformance from the Magnificent Seven, or in this case, the 10 stocks there for FNGS. But
Mhm.
you did have a lot of participation. I mean, RSP up, a solid 2 and 3/4. That got above its 200-day moving average line. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the other, well, actually, we can talk about it right now. XLY, best performing sector. That's the discretionary, consumer discretionary, but not too far behind it was your RSPD, which is the equal weighted discretionary, which tells me, hey, it
Mm.
wasn't just Amazon and Tesla doing all the heavy lifting. There was a lot of participation here. XRT, which is the retail
Mhm.
ETF. This isn't necessarily a whole one of the 11 sectors, but this is, this had a great day, up almost 6%. Now, this is still below the 200-day moving average line, so some work to do, but that discretionary area. And the other one that was really big today was, of course, tech. So XLK up in a big way. This is the technology select sector, up above its 200-day moving average line. And if you look at RSPT, which is the equal weighted of this sector spider fund, that was looking very strong with a very solid 4.7% gain. So again, it wasn't just your heavyweights, your $1 trillion market cap companies that were pulling that were pulling the indexes up. This was a lot of participation.
Yeah, very broad based strength here. And now we have, if you look at the number of up days versus down days for the major indexes since the follow through day, and especially on the S&P 500 here, Justin, only 3 down days since that follow through day on 4/22, and they were all very mild. There might be a camp out there that's saying, well, we're getting pretty stretched here. We're getting pretty extended. I think a couple points there, and would love to hear from you, is that's why going incremental on the
Mhm.
way up is a great idea instead of waiting for a day like today to get your exposure in case we do get some sort of test here. I also think it's interesting that we talked about this on IBD Live this morning as well with IBD head market strategist Mike Webster, that this is a breakout for the major indexes. Doesn't mean that all breakouts work, but we have seen in market history when you get this kind of power, it can go a lot higher than you think sometimes.
Yeah, and to be clear, the follow through day doesn't require the finishing of that breakout. The follow through day actually gives you an early entry. But when you do break out of a base, in this case, a double bottom that you've so clearly outlined, if you do break out of a base, it just gives you extra confirmation. So
Mhm.
it's a nice way. The follow through day kind of gives you that opportunity to kind of start getting in, getting some positions, getting some cushion on them. And then when you finally get the base breakout, it's just some extra time to really kind of push a little bit more aggressively, especially if you're above that 200-day moving average line. And to your point about these down days that we had, I actually like what you and Mike were talking about on Friday, the constructive action. When you get a
Mhm.
pause, that is actually kind of good, that you don't go straight up necessarily, although a lot of times we do see that with double bottoms, but that we did get that little bit of a pause. We got that little bit of a handle right underneath the 200-day moving average line. I love when that happens because it's
Yeah,
almost like it's building a platform from which to launch from, and it just needs that catalyst. And well, over the
we
weekend, we
got it.
got that catalyst.
We sure did, with the US and China making substantial progress on the trade war front. A 90-day pause as negotiations continue. A lot of the tariffs dropped back down to that 10% baseline that we're seeing for a lot of other countries out there. So, like you said, retail, consumer discretionary, but a lot of broad based strength out there. Let's take a look at a couple more things, Justin, before we go. Gold, which had been a big winner amid
Mhm.
all the uncertainty in 2025, definitely came off a bit today, down 2.8%.
Yeah, it wasn't all strength out there, right? So what suffered the most was probably those things that people were using as their safe havens, the things that they were like, okay, if the market is rough, if I don't believe that things are going to go well, then where do you hide? Well, gold is one of those places. So that definitely took a hit today. I bet, which I still do have a position in this one myself.
Mhm.
That was down today. I kept it because I have a lot of cushion on it, so I'm kind of doing a long termer on this one. But look, this kind of fulfills both things. Sometimes it's a safe haven, sometimes it's a risk on. So today it got maybe clobbered a little bit for the safe haven side, but it's still holding up pretty well. But it wasn't all roses out there. For some areas, it was not as great. And another one that suffered today was XLP, consumer staples, which again tends to be a little bit more on the defensive side. So this was just barely up. It made it up to positive territory, but not nearly as strong. And then one other thing that we should look at is the 10-year treasury yield. A lot of times people are looking like, oh, when the treasury yield is up, that's bad for stocks. Well, sometimes it means that people are coming out of the bonds, they're
Yeah.
selling bonds, and that puts the bond prices lower. But what does it do? It raises the yields, because in order to attract people back to bonds, you got to give them a better return. And so that's exactly what happened today. Yields rising, as some
Yeah.
of that fleeing from the bonds and the safe havens occurred.
Exactly. Yeah. A big day of rotation that took place. All right. Well, let's take a look at some notable names from today's session, including ticker AS. This is Amer Sports, up 11% on the day. Some volume behind the move as it cleared an entry point, Justin.
Yeah, so it's got that double bottom look. What is that? Buy point? Is it
Oh,
29.76?
I
I think.
covered it with my little
Yeah,
pin there.
I thought I thought I had it written
29.76.
down there earlier.
It did close above it.
Yeah, I
Yep.
closed just barely above it, but again, you didn't have to necessarily wait for it to close above it. As you noted, there was an early entry there, as it crossed above that trend line. So again, a lot of retail areas, we're doing well. And yeah, this had a nice double bottom look to it. It was already above its 50-day moving average line. It was already above its 21-day
Mhm.
moving average line. And this is one of those stocks that got support at its 200-day moving average line, unlike a lot of stocks that were below their 200-day moving average line. So that did give it a little bit of an extra boost. I've been paying a lot of attention to these relative strength lines, and the relative strength line versus the moving averages. This is something that Mike Webster, as you mentioned, our head market strategist, talks a lot about. And the relative strength, it was already superior, in terms of its moving average lines before this move today. So
Mhm.
those are kind of some of the stocks that I'm gravitating more towards, the ones that already had some relative strength behind them. And so Amer Sports really fit the bill in that regard. Up a really strong amount today. And this was our stock of the day. Our very own former markets editor, now retired and part-time contributor, Juan Carlos Arancibia, was kind enough to write a stock of the day article on this one for us.
Yeah, working at Investors Business Daily is a little like Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave.
Yeah.
Isn't that
So
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. So we're
Great to
glad to
still
have
have
you
him
around.
around.
Yes, yes. Okay. Next on our list, let's take a look at GEV. Justin, I've been very impressed by the comeback in a number of these utility AI power plays here. And GEV does seem to be the standout among the bunch, up 4.4%, taking out the highs from last week. Little upside reversal on Friday, quite the move since its earnings report in late April. And it's now, let's see if we can draw the line. It's right there at where it was trading before that deep seek gap down that impacted so many AI stocks. So it's made
Yeah.
up a lot of ground.
Yeah, and it's we talk about how the utilities went from this kind of safe haven to an AI adjacent play. I was writing an article about it this past week, and this ETF UTES, which has again a lot of utilities in it. The top three holdings were all up over 100% in the 6 months prior to that deep
Mm,
seek move down.
wow.
So again, not your father's utility
Utilities. Yes.
stock for those that remember the old Oldsmobile commercial. But GE Vernova has been definitely a standout in that regard. Ever since its the breakup of GE into its aerospace
Mhm.
component, its health component,
Yeah.
and this energy component, it has really kind of unlocked a lot of value there. But it's also because of the whole AI adjacent, the need for power, the need for energy that these AI companies are going to need, the servers, and everything else. It's really kind of had a lot of power. Now, look, one of the things that's been a little bit tough about some of these is you've got deeper bases. You got some pretty deep bases here. This was a 44% depth. Personally, I was kind of looking for this to climb up and maybe handle out.
Mhm.
You could say, oh, well, it kind of handled out. I mean, 2 days, but that's not exactly the length of a handle I was looking for. I was looking for a little bit more of a pause. So we'll see if that happens. But with tech coming on so strong, I think, for a lot of folks, that deep seek news didn't necessarily spell doom for AI, because even if it's done cheaper, I think that's just going to make it where a lot more people are going to want to use it, and it's going to get adopted more quickly. So that's something that we have to just be aware of. And I think that
Mhm.
the energy space, is your kind of picks and shovels. Doesn't matter who wins at AI, they're all going to need power.
Right. And 5-1, I want to say, was that the Microsoft and Meta earnings day? Yes. So that's also what I think was perhaps somewhat reassuring about the comeback of this space, is the fact that you had Meta and Microsoft talking about AI capital expenditures and the power needs that they have. So that also helped fuel some of the recent gains here for the space. So was this added to Swing Trader today, Justin?
Yes, it was. We did put this on early on. There was a lot of ads to Swing Trader today, and we removed some things that were kind of not as strong. Took profits on those to move on. But GE Vernova was the first ad this morning.
Yeah, weed and feed. All right, let's take a look at Uber, which you and I both own. Really turned it up today, finishing up 6.4% after some early volatility here. But then it really got going, Justin. Nice outside day, upside reversal, and a breakout to highs to boot by the end of the day.
Yeah, a lot of things that we were looking for this to do. It just kind of, like the market, checked off a lot of boxes. And I'm glad you brought that intraday chart up, because, again, this was one of the things that when the market first started, there was a little bit of this. Okay, are people just going to be selling into this news, or is this something that is going to be a little bit more sustainable? And so I think that there was a good reason to kind of pause, wait for the dust to settle, and then we quickly saw a lot of recoveries in a
Mhm.
lot of the best and strongest stocks, and it just kept going throughout the day. This was another stock that did get added to Swing Trader today. And you brought up a good point on IBD Live this morning about the FOMO. This is a stock that you owned, you ended up
Mhm.
selling it, and then it went up without you. So you were looking for that opportunity to get back in, but one of the things I think you did such a good job at was being patient and waiting for the right setup instead of just buying willy nilly
Mhm.
because you were getting emotional about what you were missing out on. And it's okay to get emotional about it, but this is why we have rules to combat those emotions so that we don't do something that we're going to regret.
Yeah, absolutely. I think find your process, and for some like me, I'm screening for quality, liquidity, but stocks that I believe in the fundamental story, and then I just watch them until I find the right spot. So we'll see if this trade ultimately works out, but a good start today. I think that the triple digit growth on the bottom line is impressive. Double digit growth on the top line. Mike Webster thinks that maybe they're going to be the blockbuster of mobility, but I think that they're doing a lot by the way of partnerships and thinking about robo taxis and not wanting to become irrelevant as we are looking ahead to this potential major shift in mobility. Tesla, of course, an early leader in this space, and Waymo, but Uber has a partnership with Waymo, and Tesla looking to roll out robo taxis in Austin, Texas this summer. So a lot's going on in the space. And as of right now, it doesn't appear that Uber is being left in the dust. Ultimately, the stock will tell us if it's weekend and time to get out. But as of now, it's looking pretty compelling here, I think.
I agree with you. And look, the relative strength on this has been saying that there's a lot of investors that are still very interested in this, still think that this has a lot of potential. And look, the robo-taxi thing, there's a lot that needs to be figured out on that. So
Mhm.
in the meantime, Uber kind of already has figured out its model in terms of getting people around and in a very way that in a way that people are very comfortable with. More and more people are comfortable with that, using it. Some people are using it instead of having cars themselves. And to your point, I like something that you said here, Allie. You said, "Hey, look, this is looking good. It doesn't mean it's going to work out, and that's why we have risk management rules." So one of the things that I think was a benefit to your patients was that you got in where you could manage your risk better. You've got a level here now from the 10-day moving average line, or even from that reversal that we saw. What was that, last Wednesday or Thursday?
Yeah.
So you've got something that you can kind of say, okay, if it goes below this, then I'm probably wrong on my timing, as opposed to when it was sticking up straight in the air a week ago. Well, where was that level? Where, how far
Mhm.
down would you have had to go, before you knew you were wrong? So I think that the fact that you waited a little bit allows you to manage your risk a little bit better. And now it's a completely different trade than it was a week ago, even when it was at about the same price.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. We're all doing good things, or trying to do good things with the help of this great community and great team. IBD Live is where we talk about a lot of our trades. So if you're interested in more, you can definitely check that out. All right, that is it. And I do want to mention that we do have our monthly swing trader status
Yeah.
update show coming up tomorrow, Justin. That'll be a good one. Great
Yeah, we have a
timing.
lot to talk about, wrap up a very interesting month, and we're going to just break down how exactly we've been playing it on Swing Trader. Sometimes on the defensive side, sometimes on the cautious side, and sometimes where we've gotten aggressive when it was proper to do so. So it'll be a lot about the defense of April. So that's going to be the main focus. But yeah, a lot to talk about tomorrow. So hope you join us for that.
Yes. Please check that out live on our YouTube channel tomorrow. That's Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Swing Trader on the second Tuesday of the month. We're trying to make it easy for everyone to remember. So, looking forward to seeing you and Webby there. Thanks so much, Justin, as
Thank
always.
you. Mhm.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. That is it from us for today, but we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details. We will see you there. And then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close.